It is tea on day three, and it is a tea session or a tea break that Rohit Sharma will enjoy more than he possibly has in the past in his career. Certainly in Test cricket, 100 finally outside of the subcontinent for someone you could say who thoroughly deserves it. It was coming. We could tell it was coming, and it has come. VVS Lakshman called it at lunchtime on ESPN Cricket for Match Day. He's been calling most things right in this series. That's why we have the great VVS Lakshman with us. I'm sure you'd be very pleased, Lakshman, for Rohit Sharma. It seems like a lot of people feel if there was ever a deserving 100 for how batters played, here's one. Rohit deserves that, didn't he?
Yeah, very proud of him. Very, very proud of him because I know for a natural stroke player like him, who's been always a middle order batsman in the longer version of the game, for him to come and take up this mantle of opening the innings, getting a double hundred, and having a brilliant series against South Africa at home. When he opened for the first time, and now converting that performances even in England conditions. It's not only about getting 100, but the manner he has adapted, which I mentioned during the lunch break, the manner he has concentrated for long periods of time, and also, just the great determination and the hunger he has shown to prove himself, not to prove to the world, but to prove to himself that he's capable of performing in these conditions, which are alien to him as a test opener.
Yeah, I like that you say that, to prove himself, because Rohit Sharma at this stage you mentioned is as good as an ODI great now, and at 34 years you still think personally for him he wants to leave a legacy behind where people would say this guy was good in Test cricket too. You get that impression as well for someone who's achieved a lot in the white ball format. This still is the one thing he'd want to achieve, and now you'd feel he's got that sense of achievement.
Yeah, all the cricketers, I speak to, I talk to, even now they feel that they want to prove themselves in Test match format. While even this generation of players and someone like Rohit Sharma is an exceptional leader, has won IPL for Mumbai Indians probably 4 times, has achieved all the success in white ball cricket, whether T20 or one days. But for him also, he knows that at the end of his career, when he hangs up his boots, he will be recognized as a great player if his performances in Test match cricket matches his performances in white ball cricket. And that's the case with a lot of cricketers I interact with. And that's why players like Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, Steve Smith, Kane Williamson, Joe Root, all of them are role models. And the second thing which I'm really impressed, and it's a great example for youngsters, is you never stop learning. You never stop adapting. And there is only one constant, which is change. And all the great players I played with, and all the great players we're watching them play, and I believe Rohit Sharma is a great player in action. They always are working on their game and always striving to improve,
Yeah.
and only then can they achieve excellence. I mean, great role model, and I think a great story for the youngsters to learn from.
I think that's wonderfully put. I'd love to probe two things that you said in that. Firstly, I'm sure at some point you've had the chance to discuss, have a conversation with Rohit Sharma. Has it ever come up in conversations or in a moment where you felt like, yeah, Test cricket, 100 overseas would mean something for him? Did that ever sort of come up when you interacted with him?
Yeah, it came before the South African series, because I was in a very similar position to Rohit Sharma because I was always a middle order batsman. I was asked to open in 1996, 97. And then I took it up as a challenge because the middle order was packed. And I think it was the same with Rohit Sharma, even though he has done well in the limited opportunities he got, but he never converted that potential into big performances. And I think Ravi Shastri, Virat Kohli, and the selection committee thought that they will give an opportunity for him as an opener, and he just grabbed the opportunity. And I just in that interaction, it was one thing which was very clear was he was going to follow the game plan, follow the formula which has given him a lot of success in white ball cricket as an opener. Because even in those three double hundreds which he got, Ronak, there was one thing which was common. His first 10 overs or at the start of the innings, he took his own time. He
Yeah.
was not in a hurry, and that is a template for Rohit Sharma even when he scores those big runs in white ball cricket. And what I saw that was he was ready to adapt and ready to execute that formula against South Africa. He knew where his off stump was, even when they were playing on placid Indian wickets. And I think that conversation was, I think, something which I will never forget because here was a player who's already established himself as one of the greats in white ball cricket, but he wanted to prove himself as an opener and took up a challenge because he was already established player. He could have told to the selection committee and the team management that you have to give me chance in the middle order. But he accepted the challenge and he's proved himself. And today, I think he has made himself and the entire team and all the people who have been helpful in his success very, very proud of him.
Yeah, that's excellent. And the other thing I'd like to talk about is what you mentioned about how he has made significant adjustments technically, temperamentally to succeed overseas. We remember that South Africa series, he was almost shoehorned into the opening player spot. There was debate on whether that's the right precedent to set. But we thought the real test would be when Rohit Sharma gets runs overseas. You yourself have mentioned you've seen batters change, adapt, evolve. I'd love to ask you about your own experience or among those that you played with, how hard it was, whether it sort of is the kind of thing that you can work on even in your mid 30s to just change significant technical aspects of your game to succeed overseas.
Yeah, you can definitely
Mm.
work, and you have to change, because if you're not evolving with every opportunity you're going to play for your country, if you're not improving, and if you're stagnating, then the opposition bowlers, especially at this level, will find you out, and will not allow you to survive when you're out there in the middle. But one thing which was very good, which probably I didn't do in my career as an opener, was I changed my technique. I changed my initial movement. I changed my shuffle, just to be recognized as someone who's a good opener. And I felt that playing the likes of Ellen Donald, Courtney Walsh, Ambrose, I tried to do something with my shuffle. And in the bargain, I compromised on my natural flair and stroke play. And that's why I decided that I'm not going to open anymore. But what we see with Rohit Sharma is he has not done any change as far as his technique is concerned. The only change which he has done is his approach and his mindset, because his technique is the same, like the way you see in white ball cricket. But he knows now where his off stump is, and he's ready to leave a lot of deliveries close to this off stump, just outside the off stump. And that discipline, I think, is something which has really helped him to perform in this series.
So you're saying there's not been as much of a technical adjustment. I'm sort of reading and seeing a lot of analysis from former players saying, no, there is a difference in how he's restricted the cover drive or how he now sort of plays with a dead
Yeah,
bat.
yeah. So
Apologies for that.
that's
Sorry,
not
Lakshman.
so
I think
much.
we're back. Please. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's not so much change in the technique, but that's change in the approach.
Hmm.
Because the same player can play a cover drive, but he's just controlling himself and not playing this lavish drives. And he's allowing the ball to come close to him. So it's not so much the change in the technique, but it's change in his approach, in his mindset. And that's a lot to do with controlling your instincts, a lot to do with that focus, with that concentration, and backing that game plan which you want to execute. Because ultimately, you can have all the game plans. You can prepare well for the match, but when you're in a competition, a lot of us make that mistake of forgetting what we actually thought, and we forget about execution. But what Rohit has done right from the first match, which is the World Test Championship final, not very often you've seen Rohit Sharma play that lavish drive, which is capable of playing. And again, I go back to the South Africa series. Even in that series, when Rabada, Ngidi, and Nokia were bowling, anything off stump, outside the off stump line, he was prepared to leave, and forcing them to bowl to him and bowl the stump line. And then he was playing his straight drive, his flicks, he was using his wrist. And the moment the spinners used to come, he used to play the big shots like the way he did today against Moeen Ali. So it's more about committing to the game plan than technical change.
All right, brilliant. Now, last thing I would want to talk to you about this is we speak about it so much in the media, and at times it gets to a player, at times it doesn't. But I'd love to know whether a player feels like this is a monkey off his back. Even when he goes back into the dressing room, does the team look at you a little differently now? They're all thinking it, yeah, so good, but still to get that big score in Test cricket. Maybe if you can take me back to your Test 100 as an opener in Sydney in
Yeah.
2000. I think it was your first 100, wasn't it? After scores of 50s and whatnot, you go back and suddenly the team looks at you differently when you get an overseas 100 in one of the Sena countries.
Yeah, so the scenario for me was totally different, because my
Hmm.
first
Yes,
100 as an opener was my first Test match 100.
yes.
And that's definitely a monkey off your back. Because at that time, especially I'm talking about late 1980s, early part of my career, the scenario in the changing room, or the mindset and the thought process with the selectors and the team management, was that until you get 100, you are not someone who's established in that Indian team. So
Yeah.
I think getting that first 100 in SCG was very, very important from my career point of view. But for Rohit Sharma, it's totally different. And one thing which it will definitely do in the changing room is lift the morale of the batsmen, who are
Hmm.
actually low in confidence. Whether it's Virat Kohli, whether it is Ajinkya Rahane, Rishabh Pant, and some more. I always feel that one special performance from your colleague lifts the entire morale of the team, and suddenly everyone will be talking positive things. The entire communication will be full of positivity, and suddenly, there is a lot of upbeat mood in the dressing room, and that's what this 100 will do in that Indian team dressing room.
Yeah, I mean, fair point. Now let's look at that exactly. Suddenly, Lakshman looking at a different batting lineup, one that's not fighting to clear a deficit, but the lead is already 100. Rishabh Pant might be a different threat. Jadeja could be a different threat. Virat Kohli could be a different threat. Pujara looks, different better, an extension to what we
Absolutely.
saw at heading. So what can we expect now in the final session? How do you see India approaching it?
I think it would be great if both Rohit Sharma and Pujara remain unbeaten at the end of the day's play, because that is what will be the target in the changing room. Because yes, Rohit Sharma achieved his individual milestone, but I always feel that once you get your 100, yes, you're happy about it, but the task is still cut out. I think the target which you want to give to England will be now, instead of 225, 250, would be probably 300, 350, and suddenly you're thinking at a bigger picture, and you don't want both this set batsmen to throw it away and allow England to again come back into the game, like what happened at Nottingham, what happened at Lords, and that will be the talk in the dressing room. And Pujara is also looking brilliant, and that's what suddenly the confidence does. And once you clear your head, I always remember my uncle, who was my mentor, always telling that form
Hmm.
is more to do about what you're thinking than actually your technique. And I believe that Pujara is cleared as far as his thought process is concerned, and that's why you see much more fluency in his batting. And I think rest of the other batsmen will follow the template of Pujara.
Hmm. How do you now see England and Joe Root approaching this, Lakshman? Jimmy Anderson's looking a bit tired, 18 overs in. Ollie Robinson doesn't look like the threat. He's been Overton's bowled just 7 overs. Moeen Ali's going at over 4. The lead is 100. What would you do if you're England now?
I think, firstly, I think it was great to see the way they batted against Moeen Ali. Like the way we
Yeah.
were talking in that lunch break, using your feet, playing the sweep shot, using the depth of the crease, not allowing Moeen Ali to settle down into a good rhythm. And that's why the fast bowlers had to come back. And you could see the tired bodies. You can see that the wicket is not helping them. You could see that the Indian batsmen are finding their rhythm back, their form back. So it's going to be tough. So as far as Joe Root is concerned, I think it's very important not to give away easy runs, because if you see the strike rate in this session also, it's a lot more than probably what Joe Root or England would have liked. So I think from Joe Root's point of view, he would like to not give away too many runs and keep the run rate probably under 3, probably close to 2.5, which will be a challenge. But play with the patience of both Rohit Sharma and Pujara, especially Rohit Sharma, because we know how quickly he can change his gear and how aggressive he can become, once he gets to a milestone. So I think that will be the target, and that will be the game plan for Joe Root and the England bowlers, is play with the patience of the Indian batsmen, not give them easy boundaries, and stick to one side of the wicket.
All right. Thank you very much, VVS Lakshman. So, India still need to bat this day out. What a great session it's been for them. Great day so far. Let's pick up the chat with Lakshman as well as Ian Bell, who rightly pointed out that this could very well be India's day. Still one more session to go before we can confirm that. We have seen collapses in the past, but it looks good for Rohit Sharma and Cheteshwar Pujara. We'll pick up the conversation on ESPN to confirm match date stumps, so do join us then.